The Galactic Council convened on Viridia Prime, a massive space station orbiting a quiet blue star far from any major conflict zone. Its halls shimmered with polished alloy and soft ambient light, designed to impress and calm even the most battle-hardened delegates. Species from dozens of worlds gathered there, tall, multi-eyed Velen with their flowing robes, armored Cathari whose voices rumbled like distant thunder, insectoid Miri who communicated through subtle clicks and gestures, and many others whose names humans had only recently learned. Among them stood the human delegation, small in number but impossible to ignore. Ambassador Daniel Cruz adjusted his dark suit as he stepped into the grand chamber, his boots clicking softly against the smooth floor. He was in his late 40s with close-cropped black hair and eyes that had seen both war and peace. Beside him walked Captain Elena Ruiz, her posture rigid, her uniform crisp, her gaze scanning every corner like a soldier even in a place meant for words, not weapons. Behind them came Dr. Owen Grant, older and quieter, his hands tucked into the pockets of a simple gray jacket, his mind already working through the data streams flowing into his wrist pad. Humans had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago, after a Cathari patrol ship detected their first faster-than-light test near Pluto. Since then, they had moved fast. Too fast, some said. They built ships, learned alien languages, traded rare earth minerals for advanced tech, and even helped repel a pirate armada near the Helios Rift. But speed bred suspicion. To many on the council, humans were loud, impulsive, and dangerously unpredictable. They didn't follow the old ways. They asked too many questions. They refused to bow. The peace talks were meant to bring stability after years of border skirmishes between the Cathari Dominion and the Velen Collective. Minor clashes had flared near resource-rich systems, and smaller species were caught in the crossfire. The Council hoped a unified treaty would end the violence. Humans, though neutral, had been invited because their growing fleet and strategic outposts gave them influence no one could ignore. Inside the chamber, delegates sat in tiered arcs around a central dais. A soft hum filled the air as translation fields adjusted for each species' speech patterns. High Arbiter Zorlan of the Velen rose first, tall and pale with silver markings tracing his temples. He spoke in slow, measured tones that the field turned into calm English for the humans. "We gather not as rivals," he began, "but as stewards of this galaxy. The blood spilled in the outer rim must be the last. Today we draft a covenant of peace." Polite murmurs followed. Then came the Cathari representative, General Vorak, his armored chest plates clicking as he stood. "Peace requires strength," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "And strength requires trust. Some among us," he added, glancing toward the human section, "have yet to prove they value galactic harmony over their own ambition." Daniel didn't flinch. He had expected this. Ever since humans helped a Miri colony resist Cathari resource extraction, the Dominion had viewed them as meddlers. But he kept his expression neutral. This was diplomacy, not combat. The real trouble began when the draft treaty was displayed on the central holotable. Glowing lines of text floated in the air, listing terms in dozens of languages. At first glance, it seemed fair. Mutual troop withdrawals, shared patrols, open trade lanes. But as Owen scrolled through the fine print on his pad, his brow furrowed. "Daniel," he whispered, "look at Article 7. Daniel leaned closer. The clause stated that all signatories must allow Council inspectors full access to their planetary defense networks, including orbital platforms and early warning systems. That wasn't unusual, except for one detail. A footnote specified that newly integrated species would be subject to immediate unconditional audits, while founding members like the Velen and Cathari would undergo reviews only after a 5-year grace period. It was a trap. Earth's entire orbital shield grid, its last line of defense, would be exposed within weeks of signing. No negotiation, no delay. Just open access to potential enemies. During the afternoon session, Daniel raised his hand. When acknowledged, he stood slowly. "Ambassador Zorlan, General Vorak," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We support peace. But true peace must be built on equality, not exception. Why should humanity surrender its defenses before others do the same?" Zorlan's silver markings dimmed slightly, a Velen sign of mild annoyance. "Your species has only just arrived among us, Ambassador. Trust must be earned. The Council's structure exists for stability, not sentiment." Vorak added, Your ship's patrol zones you have no claim to. Your scientists reverse engineer our tech. You speak of equality, yet act as if the rules do not apply to you. Elena's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent. Owen tapped his foot, frustrated. Daniel took a breath. We patrol those zones because pirates were attacking unarmed freighters. We study your tech because you refuse to share repair protocols, yet you buy our medical nanites without complaint. If that's hypocrisy, then yes, we're guilty of wanting fairness. A few Miri delegates clicked in what Owen recognized as agreement, but the Veln and Cathari exchanged glances that spoke volumes. This wasn't about fairness. It was about control. That evening, the human team met in their quarters, a modest suite with large viewports showing the star-dusted void. The mood was heavy. They're not here to make peace, Elena said, arms crossed. They're here to clip our wings. They think we'll fold, Owen added, because we're new. Because we don't have ancient fleets or dynasties. Daniel stared out the window at Earth's distant blue dot, barely visible among the stars. They forget something, he said quietly. We walked away from wars before. We walked away from empires. We walked away from gods who demanded obedience. He turned to face them. We don't sign treaties that treat us like children. No one argued. They all knew what came next. The following morning, the human delegation did not enter the Grand Chamber. Instead, they packed their data drives, secured their personal items, and boarded their shuttle, the Aurora. As the engines hummed to life, Daniel sent a single message to the Council's central registry. The Terran delegation withdraws from the Viridia peace talks, effective immediately. We seek no conflict, but will accept no subjugation. Then they left. No fanfare, no speeches. Just silence where voices had been. On Viridia Prime, confusion rippled through the halls. Some delegates laughed. Others frowned. High Arbiter Zorlan simply stared at the empty human seats and wondered for the first time if they had made a terrible mistake. But it was too soon for regret. The galaxy still believed humans would return, tails between their legs, begging for a seat at the table. They did not know that humanity had already decided, if the table was built on lies, they would rather stand alone. Tension filled the air inside the Grand Chamber of Viridia Prime like a slow-building storm. The human delegation had returned for the second day of talks, but the mood had shifted. What began as cautious optimism now carried the sharp edge of distrust. Ambassador Daniel Cruz sat quietly, his hands folded on the polished table, while across the chamber General Vorak of the Cathari Dominion stood to speak. His deep voice rolled through the room like distant thunder. New evidence has come to light, Vorak announced, his armored frame casting a long shadow. Scans from our border outposts show Terran freighters delivering weapons-grade plasma cores to rebel cells in the Outer Rim. These rebels have attacked Cathari supply lines and killed civilians. We demand Earth answer for this. A murmur spread through the chamber. Many species turned to look at the humans, their expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. Daniel felt the weight of their stares but kept his face calm. He had heard rumors of such accusations, but nothing concrete. Now it seemed the Cathari were making it official. General, Daniel said, rising slowly, we deny these claims completely. Earth does not arm rebels. We have no interest in your internal conflicts. Vorak's eyes narrowed. Then explain this. He gestured and a hologram flickered to life above the central dais. It showed a grainy sensor log, a human-marked cargo vessel docking at a remote asteroid base, followed by energy signatures matching Cathari military-grade weapons. The timestamp placed it 3 weeks prior. The evidence looked damning. Even some neutral delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But Captain Elena Ruiz, sitting beside Daniel, leaned forward, her eyes locked on the display. Something felt wrong. The lighting in the log didn't match known conditions in that sector. The ship's ID code flickered oddly, as if edited. Back in their quarters that night, the human team gathered around a secure terminal. Dr. Owen Grant had already pulled independent data from civilian freighter logs, deep space buoys, and even old Miri trade beacons. His fingers flew across the screen as he overlaid timelines and signal paths. This sensor log is fake, Owen said flatly. Look, the thermal bloom from the plasma core doesn't match the ambient temperature of that asteroid belt. And the ship's transponder ID? It repeats the same sequence twice. Real transponders never do that. It's a copy-paste error. Elena nodded. I knew it. They stitched this together to frame us. Daniel stared at the false evidence, his mind racing. This wasn't just an accusation, it was a setup. If the council believed it, Earth could be branded a rogue state, cut off from trade, maybe even sanctioned with military force. And with the peace treaty still on the table, the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. The next morning, Daniel requested emergency speaking time. When granted, he walked to the center of the chamber without notes, without fanfare. He carried only a small data chip. High Arbiter Zorlan, he began. General Vorak, honored delegates. You've seen the Cathari evidence. Now see ours, he inserted the chip. The central holodisplay shifted. First came logs from the Starlight Maru, a Miri freighter that had passed through the same sector 2 days before the alleged docking. Its passive sensors recorded no human ships in the area. Then came encrypted comms intercepts, Cathari command channels discussing preparing the narrative and making Earth look guilty. Finally, a timestamp analysis proved the original sensor log had been altered less than 48 hours ago. Silence fell over the chamber. Even the ever-calm Veln seemed unsettled. High Arbiter Zorlan turned to Vorak. Is this true? Vorak's voice was low, defensive. These are forged records. Human tricks, but the damage was done. Several smaller species, those who had suffered under Cathari expansion, exchanged knowing glances. The Miri clicked rapidly, their version of agreement. The evidence was too clean, too consistent across independent sources. Instead of investigating the forgery, however, Zorlan cleared his throat and spoke in his usual measured tone. While the data raises questions, the Council must maintain order. Until this matter is resolved, Earth's participation in the treaty process will be reviewed. It was a polite way of saying they were being sidelined. Worse, Daniel noticed a new clause quietly added to the treaty draft overnight. Article 12. It stated that any species accused of arming insurgents would forfeit voting rights and be subject to immediate fleet inspections. That night, the humans met again in their quarters. The view outside showed the same starfield, but everything felt different. They were no longer guests. They were suspects. Owen pulled up the full treaty text on a large screen. Look here, he said, pointing to a buried subsection. If we sign, the Council gets full access to Earth's orbital defense grid. No warning, no limits. They can shut down our shields, disable our early warning satellites, even take control of lunar batteries. Elena crossed her arms. So it's not about peace. It's about control. They want us naked in space. Daniel didn't answer right away. He walked to the window and watched a Cathari cruiser glide past, its hull bristling with weapons. He thought of Earth. Green fields, crowded cities, children playing under a sun no alien had ever seen. He thought of the promise he'd made when he took this job. Protect humanity's right to choose its own path. We came here in good faith, he said finally. We offered help, shared tech, saved lives. And in return they lie about us, trap us with fine print, and treat us like a threat just for existing. He turned to face his team. They don't want partners. They want servants, Elena nodded. Then we walk, Owen sighed. It'll look like we're guilty. Let them think what they want, Daniel said. Our dignity isn't for sale. They spent the next few hours quietly packing. No dramatic speeches. No last-minute pleas. Just careful removal of personal items, secure deletion of all local data, and a final check of their shuttle systems. Before dawn, they boarded the Aurora. As the airlock sealed behind them, Daniel sent one last message to the Council registry. The Terran delegation withdraws from all proceedings. We seek no war, but will not sign a treaty built on lies. The shuttle lifted off smoothly, its engines glowing blue against the dark hull of Viridia Prime. Inside, no one spoke. They watched the station shrink in the viewport until it was just a speck among stars. On the bridge of the Aurora, Elena activated the comms array one last time. This is Captain Ruiz of Earth. To any who listen, we tried. Now we go home. Then she cut the channel. Back in the Grand Chamber, news of their departure spread quickly. Some delegates scoffed. They ran, said a Cathari aide. Just as we expected. Others were uneasy. The Miri elder tapped her claws together in concern. High Arbiter Zorlan simply stared at the empty human seats, a faint frown on his pale face. He had assumed Earth would bend. Instead, they had broken nothing but their own chains. What none of them realized was this. Humanity had never needed the Council's approval to survive. They had walked away from harder things, Ice ages, world wars, plagues that killed millions. Walking away from false peace was the easiest choice of all, and as the aurora jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward the Sol system, Earth's sun growing brighter in the distance, the humans knew one thing for certain. They would not return until the galaxy learned the difference between power and respect. Until then, silence would be their answer. Weeks passed after the human delegation left Viridia Prime, and then months. At first, the Galactic Council barely noticed. Some members joked that Earth would send a message within days, begging to return. Others assumed humans were simply sulking, a childish reaction from a young species unused to real politics. But as the weeks turned into a full season, and still no signal came from Sol space, a quiet unease began to spread. Human ships vanished from trade lanes. Human freighters that once carried medical supplies, rare alloys, and data crystals stopped appearing at neutral ports. Outposts on the edge of human-controlled space, once bustling with activity, went dark. No broadcast, no distress calls, no routine check-ins. It was as if an entire civilization had drawn a curtain around itself and stepped quietly behind it. On Viridia Prime, the Council tried to act as if nothing had changed. The peace treaty was signed without Earth's name on it. Patrols were assigned. Trade agreements were updated. But cracks began to show. The Veln medical fleet reported shortages of a key antiviral compound, one that only human biolabs could synthesize at scale. Without it, a minor outbreak on their colony world of Lyra grew into a crisis. The Cathari, meanwhile, found their long-range graviton drives failing more often. The stabilizer crystals used in those systems were a human specialty, and no one else had mastered the precise resonance frequency needed to keep them from shattering under stress. Even the Miri, who had always traded fairly with humans, missed the steady flow of Earth-grown nutrient pastes that kept their young larvae healthy during deep space voyages. They sent polite inquiries to known human channels. No replies came. Back on Earth, life continued, but not as before. The silence wasn't born of fear or anger alone. It was a choice, a strategy. After the failed summit, Earth's leaders had gathered in emergency session. Not just politicians, but engineers, scientists, teachers, farmers, and factory workers. They voted, not by decree but by consensus, to enter what they called the quiet phase. No official declaration was made. No grand speech broadcast across the stars. They simply stopped engaging. In orbit around the moon, old mining stations were retrofitted into shielded habitats. Solar arrays doubled in size. Water recyclers were upgraded to near-perfect efficiency. On Mars, terraforming teams shifted focus from expansion to self-sufficiency, sealing domes and reinforcing underground farms. In the asteroid belt, autonomous drones began weaving a web of passive sensors, not weapons, just eyes, watching the approaches to human space. Captain Elena Ruiz oversaw the quiet deployment of these systems from a command center buried beneath the Rocky Mountains. She didn't wear her dress uniform anymore. She wore a simple gray jumpsuit like everyone else. Her team worked in shifts, analyzing data from the border zones, tracking every alien vessel that came near. So far, none had crossed the line. But they watched anyway. Dr. Owen Grant led a different kind of effort. In labs across North America and Asia, scientists worked on what they called soft shields, non-lethal defense systems based on neural resonance fields. These fields wouldn't destroy enemy ships. They would gently scramble targeting computers, confuse navigation systems, and induce temporary disorientation in hostile crews. The goal wasn't to win a war, but to make aggression pointless. If you couldn't aim your weapons or find your way home, you'd think twice before attacking. Ambassador Daniel Cruz, now back on Earth, traveled not to palaces or council halls, but to schools and town halls. He spoke to students, to dock workers, to farmers in Kansas and fishermen in Maine. He didn't talk about aliens or treaties. He talked about dignity, about the right to say no, about how peace means nothing if it's forced upon you. The people listened, and they agreed. Meanwhile, on Luna Station, a small research outpost orbiting the moon, a young comms officer named Kyle Bennett monitored the deep space channels. He was just 24 with messy brown hair and a habit of chewing on pen caps. His job was simple: listen, record, report anything unusual. For months it was quiet. Then one evening a faint signal pinged through the static. It was a Cathari freighter off course, broadcasting a weak distress call near the edge of human-claimed space. Kyle flagged it immediately. Protocol said to ignore all external signals during the quiet phase. But something in the tone of the transmission, the raw fear in the alien voice, made him hesitate. He brought it to his supervisor, who brought it to Ruiz. She read the transcript, then looked out the viewport at Earth's blue curve. "They lied about us," she said. "But that doesn't mean we become like them." She authorized a passive scan. No reply, no contact. Just confirmation that the ship was real, damaged and drifting toward a radiation belt that would kill its crew in hours. Ruiz made a note in the log. Observed Cathari vessel in distress. No action taken per quiet phase directive. But she also quietly rerouted a nearby maintenance drone to nudge the ship away from the radiation zone, just enough to buy time. No one would know it was human help. The drone carried no markings. Its thrusters left no signature. Back on Viridia Prime, the Council grew restless. The Cathari blamed the Veln for hoarding human-made parts. The Veln accused the Miri of hiding Earth's location. Arguments flared in the Grand Chamber. High Arbiter Zorlan tried to maintain order, but even his calm authority was wearing thin. The galaxy had functioned with humans as a minor but useful part of the system. Now that they were gone, the machine was grinding. Worse rumors began to spread of a warlord named Zelvor, a former Cathari general who had broken away with a fleet of stolen ships. He had been kept in check for years by joint patrols, many of which included human vessels. Now, with those patrols weakened, Zelvor struck. He raided a Veln supply depot. He hijacked a Miri nursery convoy. He even destroyed a neutral science station just to send a message. The old order was crumbling. The Council scrambled to respond, but their fleets were stretched thin, their tech less reliable without human support. For the first time, some delegates wondered if they had made a mistake. Not a small one, a big one. On Earth, no one celebrated. They watched the news from deep space boys with grim faces. They knew chaos would follow their withdrawal, but they also knew that staying would have meant surrendering their future. Better chaos with freedom than peace with chains. In a small apartment in Chicago, a retired engineer named Frank Miller fixed a broken water purifier for his neighbor. Outside, children played in a park where solar lamps glowed softly at dusk. Planes still flew. Trains still ran. Life went on, not in fear, but in quiet resolve. The galaxy thought silence meant weakness. Humanity knew better. Silence was the sound of a people choosing themselves, and sometimes that was the loudest statement of all. The galaxy was falling apart, and no one knew how to stop it. Zelvor's raids grew bolder. His fleet struck a Veln medical convoy near the Helios Rift, killing hundreds. He seized control of 3 mining stations in the Outer Rim, executing anyone who resisted. The Cathari sent warships to hunt him, but their drives kept failing mid-jump. The Veln tried to rally neutral systems, but without human-made antivirals, sickness spread through their ranks. Panic whispered through trade lanes and council chambers alike. On Viridia Prime, the mood had shifted from arrogance to fear. High Arbiter Zorlan called emergency sessions almost daily. Delegates argued over who was to blame. The Cathari accused the Veln of weakness. The Miri warned that Zelvor was only the beginning. Without balance, more warlords would rise. But beneath all the shouting, one question hung in the air, unspoken but heavy. Where were the humans? They had vanished cleanly, like a stone dropped into deep water. No messages, no ships, no demands, just silence. And in that silence, the Council began to understand what they had lost. Humans had never sought to rule. They had simply held a space of fairness, of repair, of quiet strength. Now that space was empty, and the void was filling with fire. Desperate, the Council sent a message. Not a demand, not a threat, a request. They addressed it to Terran Command and broadcast it on every open frequency, even old Earth emergency bands. It asked for a meeting, for help, for anything. The signal reached Luna Station, where Kyle Bennett was still on duty. He read it twice, then forwarded it to Captain Ruiz without comment. She opened the file in her office, the soft hum of the mountain base surrounding her. The message was humble, almost pleading. It listed the losses, admitted their mistakes, and asked if Earth would consider talks, on human terms. Ruiz didn't reply. She didn't have to. Protocol was clear. During the quiet phase, no official contact. But she saved the message, and she showed it to Daniel Cruz when he visited the base the next week. He read it slowly, his face unreadable. Then he folded the printout and tucked it into his coat pocket. "They're scared," he said. "Not sorry. Just scared." Owen Grant, who had come with him, nodded. "Fear isn't a good reason to trust them." "No," Daniel agreed. "But it might be a start." Still, Earth did not respond. The galaxy waited and suffered. Then came the day the Cathari science vessel, Dawn Chaser, drifted into human-claimed space. It had been ambushed by Zelvor's raiders near the Theta Belt. Its shields were down, its engines dead, and its life support failing. The crew, 23 scientists and engineers, were running out of air. The ship's last transmission was weak, broken by static. "This is the Dawn Chaser. We are disabled. Request assistance. Any vessel, any species, please." The signal reached Luna Station. Kyle heard it and froze. He knew the rules. But he also knew what 23 lives sounded like when they were begging. He alerted Ruiz. She reviewed the data. The ship was unarmed. Its mission logs, partially recovered, showed it was studying cosmic radiation, not weapons, and it was drifting straight toward a solar flare that would fry its hull in 6 hours. Ruiz stood at the window of her command center, looking at Earth's curve. She thought of the lies told at Viridia Prime. She thought of the treaty designed to strip Earth bare, but she also thought of the engineers on that ship, people like Owen, like her, just trying to understand the universe. She made a decision. "Send Drone 7, she said. "Reroute it from asteroid patrol. Give the Dawn Chaser a nudge away from the flare path. Then deploy 3 emergency oxygen pods from our reserve stock. Mark them as unidentified origin. Wipe all telemetry after launch." Her officers moved quickly. No questions. They understood. This wasn't diplomacy. It was humanity. Hours later, the Cathari crew woke to find their ship gently pushed into safe orbit. Oxygen hissed into their cabins from smooth, unmarked canisters. No ship appeared. No voice hailed them. Just help delivered in silence. When they returned to Cathari space, they told their story. At first, their superiors dismissed it as stress or hallucination. But the oxygen pods were real. The trajectory change was real. And the pods bore no insignia, except for a tiny symbol etched near the valve, a circle with a single line through it. An old Earth symbol for peace, the story spread. Not as rumor, but as fact. Humans had saved their enemies. Not for thanks, not for gain. Just because it was right. On Viridia Prime, the effect was immediate. Even General Vorak fell silent when asked about Earth. High Arbiter Zorlin requested the full sensor logs from the Dawn Chaser. He studied them for hours. Then he called a closed session with the Council's inner circle. "We were wrong," he said, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. "We saw their speed and called it recklessness. We saw their kindness and called it weakness. But they walk by a code we do not understand and perhaps never will." He proposed a new mission. Send a true delegation to Earth, not to negotiate. Not to demand. To listen, to learn. This time include the Miri, include neutral observers. Leave the Cathari military behind. Come in peace or not at all. Some resisted. Old pride died hard. But the fear of Zelvor and the memory of silent oxygen pods convinced most. Back on Earth, life continued as before. Farms grew food, schools taught children, factories built parts for lunar habitats. But now people spoke more openly about the galaxy again, not with anger but with caution. They had proven they could stand alone. Now they had to decide if they wanted to stand with others again. Daniel Cruz walked through a park in Denver, watching kids play near a solar-powered fountain. A woman selling bread nodded to him. He nodded back. No one treated him like a hero. He wasn't one. He was just a man who had helped his people choose wisely. That evening, he received a secure update from Ruiz. The Council was preparing a new delegation. They wanted to meet on Luna Station, under human rules. No weapons, no hidden agendas. Just talk. He read the message, then looked up at the moon in the twilight sky. It was bright, steady, silent. Earth had walked away to protect its soul. Now maybe it could walk back not as subjects but as equals. But only if the galaxy had truly changed. Until then, they would wait. And watch. And be ready. The new delegation arrived at Luna Station 3 months after the rescue of the Dawn Chaser. Their ship was small, unarmed, and painted in neutral gray. No Cathari red, no Veln silver, just plain metal under the cold light of space. It carried 12 beings, 2 Miri elders, 3 Veln diplomats, a Cathari scientist, not a soldier, representatives from 3 neutral systems, and High Arbiter Zorlan himself. No guards, no hidden weapons, no demands. They docked without fanfare. The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into the human station with quiet steps. Luna Station was not grand like Viridia Prime. It was practical. Steel corridors, soft lighting, the hum of life support, the smell of recycled air and coffee from the mess hall. A young man in a simple blue jumpsuit greeted them. His name tag read Kyle Bennett. "Welcome," he said. "Ambassador Cruz will see you in Observation Room 3. They followed him through the station. No one saluted. No one bowed. Humans moved past them with nods or small smiles going about their work. A woman carried a tray of seedlings to the hydroponics bay. 2 engineers argued over a circuit board in friendly tones. It felt less like a military outpost and more like a town floating in the sky. In Observation Room 3, Daniel Cruz waited by the large window. Earth filled the view, blue, white, alive. He wore a dark shirt and slacks, no uniform, no medals. He turned as they entered and offered a slight nod. "Thank you for coming," he said. Zorlan stepped forward. He looked older than at Viridia Prime, his silver temple markings duller, his posture less rigid. "We thank you for receiving us," he replied.
"After what we did."
"We did not expect kindness." Daniel gestured to the table. "Sit, we don't do speeches here. Just talk." They sat. No raised dais, no assigned seats. Just a round table, 12 chairs, and a pot of coffee in the center. Owen Grant poured cups for those who could drink it. Elena Ruiz stood near the door, not as a guard, but as a witness. Zorlan spoke first. "We came to say we were wrong. Not partly. Not politically. Truly wrong. We saw your speed and called it chaos. We saw your compassion and called it naivety. But you held to your principles when we offered you chains wrapped in silk." A Miri elder clicked softly. "You saved our young when the Cathari blocked our supply lines years ago. We never forgot, but we stayed silent at Viridia. For that we are ashamed." The Cathari scientist, a female named Tarek, leaned forward. "My brother was on the Dawn Chaser. He told me about the oxygen pods. No name, no price, just help. In our culture, that is the highest honor, to give without expecting return." Daniel listened. He did not smile. He did not forgive, not yet, but he listened. "We don't want your apologies," he said finally. "We want your understanding. Humanity doesn't seek to rule the stars. We don't want your thrones or your treaties. We only ask to walk among you as equals, to be trusted until we prove we shouldn't be. Not judged because we're new." Zorlan nodded slowly. "Then let us build something new. Not a treaty of control, but a covenant of choice. Any species may join. Any may leave. No forced inspections. No hidden clauses. Just shared safety, shared knowledge, and the right to say no." Owen spoke up. "And Zelvor?" "He grows stronger," Zorlan admitted. "But if we stand together, not as masters and subjects, but as neighbors, we can stop him." With your help, silence filled the room. Outside, Earth turned slowly below. Daniel looked at Elena. She gave a small nod. He looked at Owen. The scientist shrugged, but his eyes said yes. "Then we'll help," Daniel said. "Not because you asked nicely, but because innocent lives are at stake. But understand this. We join no council that treats us as less. We share tech, but not control. We fight beside you, but not under you." Zorlan placed his 3-fingered hand on the table. Agreed. No documents were signed that day. No grand announcements made. Just words, spoken plainly, in a quiet room above the moon. In the weeks that followed, human ships reappeared, not in fleets, but in pairs. They joined patrols near the Helios Rift, their stealth fields masking their approach until they were needed. When Zelvor attacked a Miri nursery station, it was a human frigate that jammed his comms and a Veln cruiser that disabled his engines. Together they captured his flagship without firing a single lethal shot. Back on Earth, life went on. Children played. Farmers harvested. Factories hummed. But now, star maps in schools showed not just Sol, but the systems where humans had helped. Not as conquerors, as friends. High Arbiter Zorlan returned to Viridia Prime, but he did not sit in the Grand Chamber again. Instead, he helped form a new gathering, smaller, simpler, held on neutral ground. They called it the Accord Circle. No one sat higher than another. Decisions were made by consensus, not decree, and Earth had a voice, not because they demanded it, but because they had earned it through silence, then through grace. One evening, Daniel stood again in the park in Denver. The moon was full. He thought of the long road from suspicion to silence, from silence to respect. Humanity had not changed. The galaxy had. A child ran past him laughing, holding a toy ship with a tiny Earth flag. Daniel smiled, just a little. They had walked away to protect their dignity. Now they walked back, not for power but for peace. And this time the galaxy was ready to walk with them,